Okie dokie, folks. Going to get started on our focus group video that coincides with the focus group spreadsheet. First up here, Apple's weekly chart. I talked for a few weeks that I believed on the downturn for Fibonacci wise, even though that 100% line was possible in the prior swing high point, that in prior times it had only pulled back to that 78.6, which it had done. That's why I took that trade for May options a couple days back. Anywho, this is the Apple weekly chart I've got here, but I do not have a trade that I'm looking to make off of the weekly chart at this point in time. So just wanted to have the chart up there so you could kind of see what I was using for it, maybe make your chart look like it a little bit. Got to move over to the daily chart, and with the daily chart here for Apple, I've got my swing points marked. Real simple, even though I really don't like marking a swing point right here off this one green candle. Um, it is something that I think could produce for us a winning trade. We came down here, we filled this gap. We came to a point that I thought we would get down to, started to make a positive move. Friday was a little wishy-washy. It was market wide, so we talked about in the market overview video what to be watching for as far as that S&P W pattern and whatnot. And I really think that should Apple give us a daily close that crosses above this value of 124.45, we'll have the shot to be looking at a 50-50 trade on the April 17th. It's a very weird strike. 132.86 is the ones I think we'll end up having to get. It'll be based on the price of them, and the first one that's 125 or below. But that could be a possibility for an upwards move. For the downwards move, if we make a daily close below 122.24, daily close below 122.24, we might see the opportunity still at like the April 115 puts as a 50-50. I don't think it'll get to 115, but I'm also not going to think. I'm just going to trade what I've studied, and I think it could at least give us the 50% win. Should it even pull back into this swing high point here? So, um, that's kind of what I'll be looking at for Apple off of my daily charts. I'm going to go over to my 60-minute chart on the Apple, and kind of very similar setup to what we saw in the S&P. This potential, not quite double bottom, but could get a W break. And I'm actually more interested, just so you all know, on the 60-minute chart of Apple for the focus group than I am the daily. If I get a 60-minute close above this 124.77, I'll look to trade some March 27th 128 calls. If I can get the 127s for a buck 25 or less, I'll definitely go with those. But it's probably going to be the 128s, depending on if it did that, would be our 50-50 trade that we'd look for. And also, based on this, if we were to close a 60-minute below 122.25, then we would have to look at our 327 119 puts for that fall into probably what would only be about the 120 area, a swing high point, that was also marked on the weekly. But just a couple trades based on my charts here that I'll be looking for Apple. I will tell you that, priority wise, Apple's 60-minute chart is a priority for me for our focus group, more so than the daily or the weekly, um, because I believe that we could take advantage of some of the shorter term gains on it to cover some of the longer term up, down, sometimes stressful and headache stuff of the longer term plays with Goldman Sachs. So that's why I'm making the 60-minute chart more of a priority to me for Apple. On over here to Goldman Sachs, I still personally think Goldman Sachs has a good shot for this lower target area and to do much like it did last year at this time. But you got to remember last year when it did that move down, it had red week, green week, red week, green week, red week before it really bottomed out. And it was a few weeks of kind of having to put up with some annoyance. And if it was going to do it, I think it would do the same type of thing. Um, I'm still holding true to my April puts, but what I do want to have people realize, if the markets were to turn around in the way that was discussed from the market overview video, then we would obviously want to take some calls. And, looking at that, I think we've got to look at this, weekly swing high point. You got 191.51 from 3, 4 weeks ago where we closed up here. And, if that were to break, then you had a double top up here as well. The last time it had reversed 195.45 might be something to watch, but we'd have to trade it to that 199.06 target area. The other thing too is I don't want to take a preemptive move and get a double top just like we had here. You had a nice red week, hammer candle, didn't go up much after that before the double top and then fell. So we don't want to get stuck in that type of action again. And that's what we'd want to look at here for Goldman Sachs off of our weekly chart. And, obviously too, that 199.06, we're more than halfway up on that. So, from the zero line that gave you that target. So, we'd want to now pick very, very cautious points if we were going to trade with that. The other thing too is I think if we fail the closing point from not this past week, but the week before, that'll give us an indication that closing point is 186.91. That'll give us an indication that we are going to continue further downwards. And after selling one puts play last week, I think I would probably look to, even though I'm holding the 417 180 calls, maybe or 180 puts, I'm sorry, maybe even look at the 417 170 puts for down to this 168.64 target. That'd be something that if I did, I'd only buy, one or two of, depending on price at the time. So we'll see. I'd want to stay a little smaller in that one with our 180 puts basically being right at even right now. Going to go over now to the daily chart on Goldman Sachs. We did have this pop up. If you remember last week's video, I want to show you something that you should remember from last week's video. If you don't, I'm sorry, but go back and watch it and pay a little better attention, I guess. Last week's video, I actually said I had this line down here, and I said, we could very likely pull back to this line and bounce up around 189. And I said, so if we did that, we'd sell one of the puts plays. And even though we could do that, I wouldn't sell all the puts plays because, what if it just turned back around or didn't make the bounce and kept falling? Well, as of right now, it kind of did what I expected it to do. It'd be pretty difficult to say otherwise because if you watch last week's video, it's exactly what we talked about. It got a little bit higher, but come on, we're talking about a $190 stock. A buck in either direction's nothing. So what we want to look at here is the potential if Thursday was a high, if that high on Thursday, the close on Thursday was the high point, we could pull back and get down to this 179.43. This would be another shorter term trade we'd want to make, and we would take this with a second position in the 417 180 puts. That would be one that, even though I've got my existing 180 puts that I'm going to see if we can get that 168 target area. If I took the second position in it, then if we hit that 179.43, I wouldn't even question if we would go lower. I would sell because that's what we want to look to do. Now, the other thing is, too, if you look at this daily chart, you can obviously see there's a W pattern here. And it broke out from that W pattern on that big move up it had, consolidated for about a month, pulled back, and it pulled back very, very close to the center of that W and made an up move. And yes, that's an obvious thing you can see. Thursday's close got right into the swing low point of this consolidation, and Friday failed to break it. That's also something obvious that you need to be able to see here. But as far as another potential calls trade, if I marked, this low down here, this high down here, and then the low that we just had, well, that would be for a replicating move. And that could lead to even 203.73 for GS. Now, in that case, how would I want to trade it? To be honest with you, I would be personally looking for it to cross the high end of this consolidation. So could we get a daily close maybe above 192.20? That would be something possible to look at. But if I get that W break on the SPY and GS has not crossed 191 yet or so, it might be one I take the 417 200 calls for that potential trade opportunity. So very, very simple there and how we'd look at it. Now, the other thing that I am heavily debating right now, and This is something that basically I'm going to do a little more study on it, see where I'm at with it. But one thing I've honestly thought about doing right here on GS is weird and ironic as it might sound, is depending on where we open up Monday, if we still open below the 0 line, I've actually considered selling everything that I've got in GS and then starting with just a strangle trade, kind of like a fresh start. And I know some people need that. And that's why I'm debating the possibility of doing that. What I would do if I made that trade would actually be the 4/17 180 puts, or sorry, the April 17th 180 puts, and the April 17th either the 195 or 200 calls, depending on price of those. And honestly, the reason I'd be doing that is to kind of give that little fresh start, let us build on which of these two fibs might be the start of it. And in all honesty, from that point, if we came down to the 179.43, kind of caught a bounce, we'd use that bounce to just start rebuilding. So that is a possibility that I just wanted to inform you guys of. I personally hate to do it, but that sell I made on puts early in this past week when we hit that target I had actually gave me 2 positions for GS. So my other consideration is right here, maybe buying both of those, the 180 puts and either the 195 or 200 calls for April, and then using the upper end of this consolidation as the stop for the puts and the 0 line here as the stop for the calls. So there are a couple possibilities that I'm kind of studying up on and weighing as what I might do. But I wanted to keep everybody aware of what I might do, because what I might do is also what some people might follow. So just understand that as a possibility moving forward as well. Good luck in the upcoming week. I look forward to trading with y'all. And make sure you don't forget Tuesday night's webinar, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time.